for Mr. Sweat recommendation.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I put that on. It might be a good time to do a refresher on the conflicts of interest that we as council members might have from time to time on something that might come before us. And I bring it up also because I don't have a conflict here in the next couple of weeks as I'm working on a project. I haven't done anything in the county, you know, I'm a builder developer. I haven't done anything for years. It's come before here really, but I only have something coming up. So I just wanted to review the conflicts and make sure that we know what they are, if there are any, and how to deal with those. So today's just kind of a discussion about those things. One of them, for example, and Scott could probably help us with this, so it's not going to be a full-blown training. I don't think it'll be more or less. We just ask questions and make sure we go. Because a conflict could be as simple as like something we had a few weeks ago, where we voted on putting kitchens in our basements and having a second kitchen. Well, we all voted on that, and that, we don't really consider that as a conflict because that benefits everybody, not just one person on the council. So it could be as simple as that, and how you deal with that. Is that a conflict or not? And Scott can kind of review the different levels of conflicts that we might have. Or, for example, I've got a project that I'm working on that will probably come before the council that I'll review myself on here in the next couple of weeks. 6-lot subdivision. Where if I were to participate in that and vote, that could be a huge conflict because I benefit from that. So I just want to do a clarification and see the broad range of conflicts that way. And then also discuss possibly who does it pertain to, who needs to abide by the conflict rules. Is it just the council? Do we concern ourselves with all the different boards? Or maybe a consultant that we hire. Just kind of want to review the rules that way. So this is kind of a place to start. Any thoughts or questions? Or Scott wants to say anything that way?
We good for Scott? Scott, did you, what do you think? I know you sent out a basic statement to us.
And I've got basically that statement again. And you know, you could spend a couple of hours going through different areas of the code that talk about conflict of interest and what it means and what it doesn't mean and where it works out. That's kind of been boiled down, and I'll be candid, I didn't boil this down. I got this from Thomas Lowe, who I think got it from Derek Pullen, who maybe got it from someone else. But we look at it, and this is what we train with, is the safe harbor from keeping someone out of being in trouble. Because our job is to try to make everything in the county go smooth and to keep county officials, county employees out of trouble. So to do that, we try to train and say, here's what a conflict of interest is. Here's what you want to do. Here's where you want to go. I can put it up on the visualizer, except I don't know how to work. Now, I put this in the council orientation. It's the same one we give to the planning commission. It's the same one we give to other boards or commissions, and it's the same one I think that applies to employees or people working for the county. So we look at it that if you may receive, and you know it's may, right? It says if you may receive. And this is what we call a safe harbor, because if you do this, you're probably going to be safe. If you may receive some private benefit from a council decision, do not participate. Private benefit may be direct or indirect, create a material, personal gain, or provide an advantage to relations, friends, groups, or associations that hold a significant share of your loyalty. And again, I don't know that this is the direct law, but this is where we say keeps you out of trouble. So if there's a doubt, opt out. Now there are cases, Mike mentioned the the situation. There was a case down in Salt Lake where they were making a decision that affected the LDS church, and some members on the city council were making the decision were members of the church. And that went to the court, and the court said, you know, that's probably dispersed enough that we're not going to say because it affected the church and because you are members, you have to opt out of that decision. And so they said that's not a conflict of interest. There's situations that can really kind of change on a very small change of facts. For instance, if the council is making a decision and one of you, we had one that came up here a few years ago, it was a budget issue. So the council was going to pass a budget as a governing board, and one of the governing board members had a relative who was an employee of that district. There was nothing special about the budget other than there was a cost of living increase across the board. And somebody said, shouldn't that governing board member opt out because that's a family that's getting this raise? And I said, you know, if it was him being singled out for a raise, or even as something different than the rest of the district, maybe so. But the fact that that district, probably the county and several other districts all got the same cost of living raise is dispersed enough that you don't really believe that that was all done to benefit that one person on that person's vote. So there's no way to lay down a good right line rule to say this is a conflict and this isn't. It's a case-by-case analysis. It's fact-specific. But this definition is a way to keep out of trouble, a way to make decisions so that no one's going to come back and say, boy, that sure looked, because we hear it all the time. We make a decision or we do something in the county, whether it's the council, whether it's any department, whether it's an employee, and we hear somebody say, boy, you know, that sure looked good because of this and this. And so we just try to avoid that. Try to make our decisions based on not having anything that looks like we were being shady or we were doing something to benefit ourselves or one of our, again, close personal friends or family.
So along those lines, what would be the consequence of doing that if you stayed on and voted and it benefited you or a member of your family?
So the code says if you have a conflict and you knowingly and intentionally violate the law by going ahead and voting or making a decision that you have a conflict on, that you lose your employment or your status, in other words, you're dismissed, and it could be a class, I think it's a Class B misdemeanor. There could be a criminal charge. Also, the decision that was made can be rescinded, and so it has to go back and go through the process again. Now, interestingly enough, there's two acts. There's one that specifically applies to counties and cities. There's another act that applies to the state, all of its branches, and other political subdivisions, which I believe includes special service districts. The state one is a little bit more, has a little bit more teeth in it than the county one. The county one is a misdemeanor charge. The state one, if there's a lot of money involved, it's a felony charge. And so there's some real teeth in it, which is why we say stay in the safe harbor. Make your decision so that no one can come back in and say you were out there violating the law, out there violating the conflict of interest that you knew about and intentionally went ahead. Now you look at what must a council member do or someone do. First of all, we have to disclose. If anybody has an interest in a company or a business that works closely with the county or is often time working with the county, that has to be disclosed when you first take office or first take employment, and for the council members at the beginning of every year, you make those disclosures. So it has to be disclosed. We recommend that you have to abstain from voting on the matter and you not participate in any deliberations on the matter. Probably not by law, but we've suggested, and in the past, council members have left the chamber during deliberations so that no one say they were back there, you know, putting the the evil eye on other council members to make sure that they were voting the way they wanted them to.
We have had council members do that before.
Leave the chambers. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I think what the evil eye can do.
Yeah.
No, they followed this to the letter.
And I've never seen a councilman give an evil eye, but I've seen them in the chamber so that no one can claim they were given an evil eye, right? Any other questions or?
Anything further from Scott?
I can talk for hours on it, but I asked Greg, how much do you want me to say?
Well, and I think the direction was, let's have a discussion and go over some generic things, and that seems to be what we're doing here. I think one we want to make sure on is that if we have a contract or have awarded a contract with someone, and they then are helping us write, that is that where we need to stop that, or if we don't want to get ourselves in a position where we then hire that same person who's writing the requirements to do an administration of that plan once it's in place. I guess that was one of the other questions. Is that fair? That was what brought some of this on too.
Sure. We don't want the person who's out there saying, here's what you need to do under our code, then benefit from the code. That goes right back to the personal benefit. We wouldn't want to put any employee in that position or a contractor in that position. So I think the answer is to learn the facts, find out exactly what happens, and if there's a problem, then help avoid that problem by taking that person out of both roles.
Does that clear up some?
Now, we don't need to discuss whatever the instance. I've been doing some research on that, and I need to visit with you on that, because I can tell there isn't that conflict there with.
We just want to make sure, so we don't end up being liable for some decision we made.
Absolutely.
So as long as we're comfortable, that's all.
Well, I'll visit with you on this
personally. So yeah.
You ever come?
I might add that.
Sorry, say that again.
I might add that during our recent financial annual audit, they asked us about related party transactions, and so our office gave them the ones that we could think of where we make purchases as a county to a business that has a relative of who's an employee of the county, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that could be kind of hard to not do business. If you didn't do business with people that were related to workers of the county, you might be able to do business in the county.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we try to do local business.
So we disclose to them the ones that we are aware of, where there's business with an employee, county employee as a relative, and they didn't find any significant amounts. So that, just to add to that.
And I haven't been the last couple of years, but usually the auditors come to me and ask me specifically if I'm aware of any county employees or elected officials that have a direct conflict in the county with any business or any dealings, and I've been asked that for years. So that's part of the audit process.
I had to declare conflict, me and the other on the community action board, and she's not on anymore, but my cousin was on the board. We had to both declare, just be aware we're cousins, distant cousins, but just to be aware.
Yeah. Mr. Kozakowski.
Thank you. I'd say that's a good place to start from, Scott. Both I and my wife have been involved in conflict of interest determinations for decades. It's quite a bit more involved than that, but that's a good start if you see it and know it. But I would like to ask the question of the boards, of the people that aren't in this room now. There are boards, there are commissions. Are they also subject to these same rules?
I think everybody that's an officer or employee of the county.
So if you're an appointed board, such as the Planning Commission or the JSPUB, this is all applies to anything we do as a public, correct?
That's my knee-jerk reaction. If again, you get to look at something fact specific, and so my first reaction is say it applies to everybody. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of that. Now, somebody may come up with a situation that we look at and say, under these situations, maybe it doesn't apply. But I think the general rule is assume it applies until we can say we're not making somebody a problem otherwise.
Okay.
For 2 years now, I've raised issues about the planning commission and planning commissions, and no one has ever even looked into it and never was responded to either Kit or me, so I'd like just to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Ms. Taylor?
I would like to add a couple things too on this subject. In the past, there have been planning commission issues, and one of which somebody did recuse themselves, so they were doing the right thing. The only problem is they gave a lecture to the public and to the other the commissioners before they left the room. So we sat there and listened to him basically give his opinion before he left the room. So that's, I think, something we need to talk about too, where
That's no longer that commissioner is no
yes,
longer.
but just
I
to,
understand.
since we're talking about it now, without any issues on the table, it's a good time to talk about it, just to make sure it doesn't happen again, because that was very upsetting to a lot of people. One other thing, I would like the attorney to talk more about any personal relationships that is outside this council, that if you have a friend or a business associate that comes to this body to ask for any benefits, how does that play into conflict of interest? It's not just about them personally being benefited, but their relationships in a business setting or family member or whatever, but personal relationships outside. And should they recuse themselves if their business associate is coming to this council to ask for some sort of benefit?
You know, and that's where I think it becomes a fact-specific inquiry. If you look up at what I've got there on the board, it says provide an advantage to relations, friends, groups, or associations. So that's all covered in there. You have that on one hand. On the other hand, you have, if you know them, is that a conflict of interest? Well, in a small county like this, most people know a lot of people.
No, I'm talking more about direct business
and
relationships.
that fact-specific inquiry to say, in this situation, and you know, most of us know it when we feel it, right?
Yeah.
We know
I
when we
was
feel
going to
like
say,
there's
there's
a
a
problem.
smell test there too. I've lost friends based on decisions I've made sitting in this seat. People who no longer speak to me because they didn't like the decision I made. That's unfortunate. It comes with the territory. The smell test is am I doing this for him or I'm making the right decision based on the whole? Really some of those, at least in my opinion, would come down to that. You have to pass your own smell test, if that makes sense.
Right.
But I understand what she's saying, or what Ms. Taylor is saying too about I think we need to do a good job training our new members on commissions and things and make sure they're aware, because they may not know. They're on for a short time, they've been here and they haven't seen that. So I think we do. And
I think we do, and there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, we can always do better.
There always is, and I would guess that most of you have been through 2 or 3 or more of these trainings, and yet you have sat through a training and you know, what was the details on that? Because it gets very specific.
So who's responsible? Let's say that somebody does violate it. Their business associate comes in and the council, the person votes, and it benefits their associate. Who is the one that then brings the misdemeanor charge?
Those who listen.
So, you know, that's going to come back to my office, but then I run a conflicts check, right? So someone comes in and says, hey, this person is violating the law. Now I have a conflict if I know them very well. And candidly, if they're a county employee, I might have a building conflict. And so I may have to send it out to another county to look at that and make that decision. Those are tough calls because we try to send it out, but we try not to send a third of our cases out to
But I think,
a neighbor.
as I understand the question is, who's the person that's really responsible for the problem and close to the individual where the conflict
Your
is, I
office may
believe.
not be aware that they're a business associate of a council member, for example. So then,
So initially, it's each person.
right.
I mean, theoretically, we're all trying to be the good guys here, and so we know, and that's what I go back to, we know if there's an issue. If there's an issue, That's why the first thing is disclosure. That's why when something happens, it says, hey, you know, I work for a subsidiary of that company, a little bit on the side. Now everybody knows, now it's out, and now it's a better chance to make an analysis to say, is it close enough, is it a big enough deal to preclude me from voting, from taking part in this? And so it starts with the whole disclosure.
We've filled out disclosure forms before. They're in the clerk's office, aren't they?
Well, this was on our deal today. Who do we turn these into? You said we had to do these once a year?
Yep.
Who do we turn them into? Does the
Brent.
clerk keep them?
I think it's the clerk.
Yep. Okay, any further discussion? Thank you for the input.
Yeah, just one more. So, just to clarify some things as well. So I've got, like I said, I've got a project coming up, which I'll definitely recuse myself on because I benefit from that personally. But in the past, I've worked with the building department, and I've worked with the planning department, and we've worked with, you know, the building permit process. You know, I worked with Doug and Luke and Don Wood on the DRC process, and we talked about that in the past. And Don will be working on that DRC process to see if we can get that online. So that might come across as a conflict, but it actually benefits everybody, county, the developers, the builders, so it's not just me personally. So I'm going to address that at all as far as that, because Spencer as well could benefit from that on a vote, you know, being an engineer, you know, or a builder or a developer.
Wasn't that what he said is that, like the case with the short members of the church is that it's dispersed enough?
Right.
And it was known when you were elected by the public that you were a developer, so nothing, like you didn't sneak it in. But I think it was the dispersal argument. Maybe that was a question for Scott, but I should have made.
Well, the answer kind of, again, goes back to a factual inquiry. If it's a decision and the voters voted you in knowing you're a developer, and they say, we think that he'll have an insight and make good laws. When does that change? Probably changes the minute you've got a project and the decision you're working on would affect your project. Okay. And does it seem fair? You might say it doesn't, but what it does is it takes you out of anybody saying, yeah, and I'm sorry we're using you brought it up, yeah. But it takes anybody out saying, yeah, Mike Peterson's doing that because of his project. It makes the whole government look more transparent and better if you say, you know, I've got a project this could affect, I'm backing out, I'm not going to be involved at all. That makes us all look better.
But it doesn't preclude him from doing his work as a builder.
Right.
He can apply for a permit, he can go through all these processes. There's nothing in that precludes any of you from proceeding with what you do as a job administratively when you're in compliance with what the code is. Those questions generally come up when the codes are changed or there's legislative action that modifies things or something different from what's there. But just because you are who you are doesn't mean you don't get to any longer participate in your business because you got on the council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I went to get into that clarification. One last thing. I attended a Heber City meeting, and the mayor at the beginning, she just said, hey, is there any conflicts before we start? You look at the agenda, and she asked at the beginning of the meeting if there were any conflicts, or if we want to consider that at all.
Yeah, I think that certainly won't hurt. Anything we can err on the side of caution, I would rather do that than not.
I'm really impressed how she handled that. Okay, very good.
Yeah, and then it's just a subtle reminder in every meeting.
Yeah, thank you very much for the discussion. That's all I have.
Okay, we'll move on.